Yo, what's happening, my brews and brewettes? My name is Wayne. Welcome to my channel where I ride trails around the world, I rate mountain bikes, and I review products. The internet is currently on fire about this little piece of kit. This is the DJI Osmo Pocket. And hopefully after this episode, you are gonna know if you are gonna want one of these for action sports. So let's roll that intro out. Now before we get started, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell and you will be notified every time I drop a video, which is weekly. This is what it looks like. It is extremely small. And that leads me to the first good point of this Osmo Pocket, which is the size of it. This thing is tiny. I mean, like, it's easy to carry this around and it's easy to store it in your pant pocket. The second good point of this camera is the awesome picture quality. It does have extremely good picture quality for its size. You get 4K at 24, 30 and 60 frames per second. You get 1080 at 24, 30, 60 frames and 120 frames per second with this camera. So in this camera are two settings. There's fine and there's super fine. If you're shooting super fine with this camera, the picture quality is absolutely amazing for this camera size. If you're an adventurer or an action sportsman, you know the time is of the essence when you're filming. So getting a camera fired up and ready to start rolling quickly is essential. And this Osmo Pocket really starts up in a matter of seconds. Now check us out. Ready to start rolling already. I would say it's like 2 seconds slower than my Samsung Galaxy S8, which isn't too bad for a gimbal stabilized camera. No matter how good digital or software enabled stabilization is, it just cannot beat optical stabilization. The Osmo Pocket comes with a bunch of features. The biggest one for me is the slow motion and also the time lapse. Because it's got a gimbal on, they've included motion time lapse. So you can set up a time lapse with camera motion to ensure that you get a real epic shot. The next pro on this is the build quality. It feels really comfortable in the hand, and it's also got that nifty screen there to ensure that you got the proper framing of your shot. The slow motion footage is absolutely fantastic from this camera. For the sheer size of it, I mean, I was pretty amazed. The camera adapts to the lighting situations really quickly. I was really impressed with it. Like, for instance, if you're riding out in the open and you go into a forest full of trees, I would say it's a lot better than my GoPro Hero 4. And the final pro of this camera is the price. For what this camera is, the quality of the picture and the features you get with this camera, it is extremely well priced. Now, I've had this camera for a couple of weeks and I've figured out a bunch of things that I don't like about this camera, especially for action sports like I do. So the first drawback of this camera is the field of view, which is extremely narrow. It's only 80 degrees, which is less than half of what a GoPro is. To put that in layman's terms, with the Osmo Pocket, you're getting this much picture. With the GoPro, you're getting that much picture. You can capture a lot more with the GoPro. You're less likely to miss something with a GoPro. Another drawback of this at the moment is the mounting options with it. Here in South Africa, currently, at the time of filming this video, there's no available mounting bracket for this camera yet. At the moment, I'm like hacking it and I'm using cable ties to mount it up against things. The third drawback about this camera is the battery. Battery life on the Osmo Pocket is around about an hour, but that's all dependent on what frame rate, what quality you're shooting at, and also if you're shooting at fine or super fine. And the inability of swapping out batteries really limits this camera. You can, however, always pack a power bank with an extra lead and just power it up from the power bank if the battery runs dry. The fourth drawback of this camera is the audio quality. The audio quality is okay. It's decent for talking and stuff, but if you're going to take it out on the trail with your bike, then you pick up how bad the audio actually is by the sound of the bike. And compared to the GoPro Hero 4, the audio quality of this stinks. And even with the new firmware, the audio quality is still pretty terrible, but that's compared to the GoPro Hero 4, which has really good audio quality. Next drawback is that you are only able to change settings if you have your phone, which limits this quite a bit. If you change from pro mode to normal mode, you have to plug your phone in to change it back to 24 frames. There's no 24 FPS option if you take it out of pro mode. So you are extremely limited with settings if you don't have a phone. If you do have a phone, it does take a bit of time. Stick that in there, take the phone, plug the phone in, go into the DJI app, set it up in there, and then you're good to go. If you're shooting action sports, time is of the essence and you don't have time to muck around changing settings from a phone. Sixth drawback of this camera is the limited visibility. This little screen is great, but you're limited with what you can see there. When it's sunny and really bright out, I find it hard to see exactly what's going on the small screen. The size of the screen is also tiny, so you gotta like really look closely if you want to see what's going on. It's nice to have as a vlogging camera because you can actually see yourself and you can set the frame up really well. If you're shooting a moving subject, then the size of this viewfinder just makes it really tricky to keep up with that target. The next sad thing about this camera is if you are planning to mount this up against your body on a chesty or onto a shoulder strap, then setting up the shot is virtually impossible unless you have a cable which you can attach the cable to your phone with. The viewfinder is right up against my body, so I can't set up the shot and I can't see it. If I'm going to attach the phone onto this while it's on the chesty, it's also completely out of sight, so I can't see how I'm setting the shot up. The final bad point of this camera that is very, very important to me. When you put this camera into slow motion, it crops the frame significantly. So it essentially zooms in. You literally get less picture in the frame. And that leads to tricky situations and it makes it extremely difficult to shoot and get a proper shot in a confined space. It now forces you to get further away from a subject than in other shooting modes. So the chances of messing up a shot or missing it are a lot bigger. For vlogging, it is awesome. The video quality is great. You've got great capabilities with this camera. The audio quality is decent for vlogging, but for action sports, setting this camera up is a drag. Firstly, because time is essential and it takes time to set this camera up. If you take it out of pro mode and you want to shoot back into 24 frames, you've got to plug it in and then set the whole camera up again. It just takes time. Because slow-mo mode is cropping the frame and zooming in, it makes shooting in small confined spaces extremely tricky. And to mount and set this camera up into a first-person viewpoint, like an attachment like on your shoulder or chesty, it is extremely difficult to set the viewpoint without the use of a cable. So that's it. That's my review on what this camera is like for action sports. I hope you, my brews and brewettes, enjoyed this video. Punch that like button if you like this video. Subscribe if you like my channel. Thanks for hooking up with me today. I will catch you on the next episode.